Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining me today. So today's video has been 6 weeks in the making and it's something a little bit different. I wanted to tackle my fear of flying head on this year. It was one of my New Year's resolutions for 2020 and I got right to it at the start of the year actually. And I thought I would document the process because I know after talking about it on Instagram, a lot of people also have quite a bad fear of flying. So after about 10 years of suffering and not really knowing what else to do, having tried most things, I decided to give hypnotherapy a go in order to tackle my fear of flying head on. This video is gonna start with me chatting a little bit more about how I feel when I get the fear of flying, how I think it came about, and everything I've tried up until this point. And then we're gonna jump into some of the vlog footage that I actually recorded during 6 weeks of hypnotherapy with a professional psychiatrist trained in hypnotherapy in the human Givens style of therapy. And then we'll jump straight back to me after we've gone through the vlog and I'm gonna give you an update on how it all went after my first flight. My fear of flying started, I think the earliest I can remember it actually happening was when I was in my early 20s. My sister Jessica and I went on a flight together to the Caribbean and she had already established her fear of flying. So she actually had with her some diazepam pills that the doctor had prescribed her for fear of flying. And at this point I remember having taken a few flights on my own and not been too bothered about it actually, but her like sort of energy on that flight made me feel quite nervous, I remember. So I remember asking her for one of the diazepam pills, taking it, and it was quite a funny experience. It didn't really change how I felt about the flight. I still had a little bit of anxiety, but yeah, it was made a whole lot funner by taking diazepam. Diazepam is quite a common prescription medication used to calm nerves down. So the doctor does prescribe it here in the UK and I believe other parts of the world as well for fear of flying amongst other things, but actually that's something they're clamping down on soon. My doctor told me this last year when I went to him to get a renewed prescription of diazepam. It's going to get a lot harder to actually access the drug. Now I want to just backtrack a little bit back to when I was first kind of discovering that I had a fear of flying. It did seem like it actually kind of came from nowhere, to be honest. I remember as a child flying quite a lot with my family and my mum was always a really nervous flyer to the point where she would grab my dad and be like, oh my god, like the terror in her voice, in her physical actions. Like to me as a child it was quite visible that she was terrified of flying, and to this day she still is, although she's gotten a lot better actually. Thanks Mom. I think it was probably you that gave me my fear of flying, which is not unusual. A lot of children can actually take on their parents' anxieties if they witness their parents being anxious during their childhood, but it actually didn't manifest until I was an adult myself. I remember taking plenty of flights when I was younger and actually really enjoying the experience and thought it was really, really exciting. So yeah, when I was in my early 20s and I had that first flight with my sister Jessica and I got that first wave of anxiety, it did seem like after that, ever since, it just slowly built and built and built and built. Fast forward almost 10 years, I'm now the worst I have ever been when it comes to the fear of flying. I have tried almost everything to stop myself from feeling anxious in flight and nothing to this point has worked, which prompted me to look into hypnotherapy. Now, a few things that I've tried, and if you are watching this, you might have already tried them yourself if you have a fear of flying also. First, I started with alcohol, which is kind of a given. I know a lot of people rely on having a few drinks before and maybe on takeoff and then for the first few hours and then kind of nodding off to sleep. Unfortunately for me, and these are other issues I have, I don't sleep very well anywhere other than my own bed. So having a nap on a long haul flight or even a short haul flight was near impossible for me. Coupled with the anxiety of flying, there was absolutely no way I was getting to sleep. So alcohol didn't work. I also tried to take diazepam, as I mentioned earlier, which is like an anti-anxiety medicine. It's supposed to just kind of calm you down. I was taking one tablet, then I was taking two, and then before I knew it, I was taking the maximum dosage and nothing was working. It was almost like my adrenaline was so strong, it was just overriding all the medicine. At best, it just made me kind of drowsy, but it didn't do anything to eradicate the fear I had when we were actually in the air flying the plane. After that, I tried sleeping pills, which again, much like the diazepam, would kind of send me off into a bit of a stupor, but it was one of those sleeps when I was just like constantly, so that didn't work either. So at this point I feel like I was medicated out. Alcohol wasn't working. I was also trying breathing techniques. I had meditations in my ears with headphones kind of talking me through breathing techniques, fear of flying, like podcasts and all of that sort of thing. Again, none of it was working. None of it would sort of grab my attention enough to like remove my sense of fear of flying. So I really didn't know what to do. I tried everything at this point and it was steadily getting worse. I have a job where I travel a lot. I'm usually on a plane at least once a month with my line of work. I just wasn't getting any easier for me. I decided to look into hypnosis because I had actually heard from several people that it had worked for them and had basically like flipping a switch just erased their fear of flying. To be honest, it almost sounded too good to be true. How on earth can someone just erase years of well-practiced and rehearsed fear and anxiety when it comes to flying? Honestly, I get on the plane and my palms are sweating. I just didn't know how going to see someone and going into a trance, whether they could even get me into a trance was possible, because like I mentioned before, I'm like quite an anxious personality. I'm very like switched on all the time. I can't even sleep properly anywhere but my own bed. So how was somebody going to get me into a trance in a room with a relative stranger and sort of unlock this fear of flying and sort of eradicate it from my brain? I was skeptical, to say the least, guys. Before we jump into what the process actually was and the footage that I've got for you guys to watch of me actually going to see my hypnotherapist, I just wanted to kind of skirt over some of the feelings and fears I get when I'm in the sky. So to begin with, I get I'm getting kind of tense thinking about it. I get like anxiety across my chest. I get very shallow breathing. My limbs and hands and feet tingle quite a bit. I get sweaty palms. I've actually found myself, I developed a habit, like a behavior where I have to constantly check the plane. That involves looking out the window, always being in a window seat, looking out the window, having the blind up, just being able to check that everything's okay outside. I stop air hostesses, air stewards as they pass, and I ask if everything's okay. If turbulence ever starts on a plane, I always need to make sure I know when it's going to end. If they know, they need to tell me. If they don't know, well then I just suffer a little bit more. It's very much a control thing for me, and I just, as I'm on the flight, no matter what point, whether it's turbulent, whether it's smooth sailing, I just have this overwhelming dread that we're gonna go down. So as you can see, it's all super uncomfortable, especially for long haul flights. The way I feel when I leave the plane when it's finally landed is just the most overwhelming sense of relief ever. It's like my anxiety has spiked and then all my adrenaline just crashes down on me. In essence, it's just not healthy. I could really do without those crazy anxiety spikes every time I'm on a plane. So let's jump into the footage. I'll explain how I found my hypnotherapist and what we're going to do for the next 6 weeks together, and then I'll see you in a few and we will talk about the results. So it's Monday morning and I have been sent some forms to fill out from Maggie, the hypnotherapist that I'm going to be seeing this week on Thursday. It's basically just like confidentiality agreements, telling me how she stores my data, also what goes on in the session of hypnotherapy. Also, she's got me filling out a form as well, just basically background information about why I want to come and see her, what my problems are, that sort of thing. It goes into quite a lot of detail actually. It's like talking about regular meals, if I smoke, how much exercise I do, how much I drink, how my sleep is, how do I relax, my hobbies, my interests, my job, all that sort of stuff. So it's like quite an overview just to give, I guess, her an insight into who I am and what my problem is. I've just filled those out and sent them back to her. The session is £80 for 50 minutes to an hour, and that seems about the going rate from all of the other therapists that I've compared online. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not nervous at all. Like, I'm actually at the point where I will try anything to curb my fear of flying. It is getting more ridiculous every time I fly, so I'm just fingers crossed this works. The day is finally here. I'm going for my first hypnotherapy session. It's in Old Street, so I'm just heading there after an appointment in town. I don't really know what to expect, to be honest. Like, I've been thinking about it all week and I'm not nervous, I'm not anxious, anything like that. You know, I've been in enough therapy sessions, like led on enough couches while people take care of me to not be anxious at all about it. I just want it to work. that's it really. Like, I just want it to work. Obviously £80 a session, and I don't know how many sessions I'll need, but she said probably 2 or 3 for the one issue. So yeah, I'm just really desperate for it to work. Like, I travel so much with my job, I just want to be okay with getting on a plane. I really, really do. Hey guys, so I was gonna actually record as soon as I left the hypnotherapist's office earlier today, but I had a house viewing and then I just don't know where the rest of the day went. I went back on emails, got sucked in, but I've done my first session and I wanted to just give my immediate feedback. It was so interesting. I honestly can't remember everything she said because it's like she was just like feeding me nugget after nugget. And it doesn't always work like this. Sometimes when you go for hypnotherapy, you start doing hypnosis from the first session, but she actually told me a little bit about how she works, and she's a human givens therapist, which means she likes to do a lot of like digging into the emotional side of things, and if your emotional needs aren't being met, and apparently that helps her during the hypnosis process to kind of get to the root of the problem better and like better solve your problems basically. So she gave me the option. She said, do you want to just dive straight in and we can start working on the fear of flying problem, or do you want to do some like emotional work, like just sort of like a get to know you? So we did 2, I guess you could call them like tests, where we just went through a bunch of questions. Like, one was quite long, it was like 34 questions, and the other was about 10. And she said it gave her quite a bit of insight into where I might be lacking in emotional needs in my life as a person. People that develop fears, often it can come from sort of a place of need or neglect. So yeah, so the first session was very much, it was 60 minutes, she was lovely, the room was very small, but it was just a chair and a little sofa. I was on the sofa, and we just, yeah, she was such a nice woman. It's really interesting to hear the way she works. I've had therapy quite a few times during my life, and I've always gone to see different types of therapists, whether that's Gestalt, talking therapy, CBD, so it was really interesting to hear about her, the way she works and her background. She asked me at the end of the session if I wanted to continue, and I said yes, I do. So I'm going to be seeing her next week, and we're going to dive straight into the hypnosis side of things because she's done all the like the groundwork in getting to know me, I guess. She said more stuff should surface during hypnotherapy sessions, so it'll all just be really helpful for her. She like did some evaluations, she asked me a lot of questions, and then we moved on to her talking about how the brain works, which I found really interesting, how the brain has different areas in it, and how where all your like fears, your sort of caveman fight or flight fear part of your brain. So this is where the fears are, and this is where my fear of flying comes from. It's stored in this part of the brain. She says that I can't remember all the exact words, I'll ask them next week, but she said the habit of visiting the fear when flying is stored in this tiny little part of my brain, which is hooked on to another part of the brain where we have like our fight and flight mode, right? And often fight and flight is wrongly used by humans, and that's where anxiety comes from, because we revisit these fight or flight behaviors over and over again. We strengthen them up so much that they become habit, they become strong. So that's why our fears can grow with time, because we revisit them so many times. And I fly so much with work that I've basically strengthened this behavior pattern. She said what we're going to do is unhook it from that part of my brain, which I thought was such a like practical way of explaining it, like just unhooking it, like almost like taking a plug out of a wall socket. I can't imagine it's going to be that easy, but that's how she explained it. So it's so interesting. So yeah, that's kind of what happened today. I liked her enough, and I felt secure enough with her that I definitely want to do more sessions and see this through. She also gave me a really cute card as well. It's all about anxiety. It's like an anagram of aware, and she said this is going to be really helpful in sort of getting over my anxiety when I fly. And it's like, accept the anxiety, turn your anger, desperation and fear into acceptance. So it's just accepting the presence of the anxiety. Then W, watch it with your observing self. Watch it without judging. So often when we get anxiety or we go into panic mode, we're like, oh my god, what is this? Oh no, I feel really shit, I'm really anxious, okay, this is really bad, what's gonna happen, how am I gonna cope? That's us judging the anxiety. So it's almost about like separating yourself from it. Rate the anxiety from 1 to 10, give it a name, like make it so it's not part of you. You are not your anxiety. So that's the next step. And then A, act with it normally. Do what you were going to do. If you can leave it, leave it. Obviously a little bit difficult if you're on a plane. So I'll be focused more on staying with the anxiety and separating myself from it. And then it's R, repeat the above steps, accepting, watching, acting with it. And then E, expect the best. What you were worrying about may very well not happen at all. surprise yourself by the way you handle your anxiety. It sounds so simple, and I'm like, everyone's probably thinking, anyone that's watching this that does have anxiety, like, well, I try that all the time, but I'm really gonna give it a go. At the end, we had like 5 minutes to spare, so she just wanted to test her like technique of taking me into a very relaxed trance. So we did that, and it happened really quickly. She said I went into it in less than a minute, and I was like, how do you know? And she's like, oh, trust me, I know, I can see from your relaxed state. But she said because I do yoga and because I already meditate, it was quite easy for me to access sort of a relaxed state. So it can be harder for some people, I think. So on the whole, really positive. I'll be going back next week and having a proper hour of hypnotherapy. So I will sort of tell you all about that next week, I guess. But yeah, I'm feeling really positive. And I've just had a trip come into Las Vegas for March. So we have 7 weeks and counting until my next flight. So let's see what we can do. So today is Friday. It's 8 days since my first hypnotherapy appointment. So today is my second one. Just heading there now. I'm feeling really odd today, actually. I've had a really busy week, so the week's gone really quickly. But I'm not like tired. I feel quite energized, actually. I was gonna have another coffee, my last one of the day, but I decided not to, just because I don't want to like, I don't want it to affect going into like a state of hypnosis. So I've just left that. I'm actually quite excited. After talking to the lady last week, she seems to like really know her stuff. I'm also kind of like a little bit skeptical as well, because the way she spoke about just unhooking that fear memory from the fight or flight part of my brain, it just sounds so like just black and white, you know, which it's obviously not. It's like so much more complicated. So yeah, I don't know what to expect. She thinks it's a really simple problem to solve within a few sessions, so let's see. I'm in the bathroom at Grind in London Bridge right now. I've just come down here because I've got about an hour and a half left of my working day on Friday, so I thought I would sit with my laptop and get a drink, and also just kind of digest what happened in my hypnotherapy session, which I just left. So today's my penultimate hypnotherapy session. I'm quite sad about it, actually. I'm really enjoying going. It's so much more like therapy than I ever knew, and you know, we did like 2 sessions that was really focused on fear of flying, and now we're moving on to other things. Like today we're gonna do my TMJ, like my teeth grinding, because that's also something that she can help fix. We're also gonna do some like self-esteem stuff. I've not told you much about the hypnotherapist. Obviously you guys might have questions about who it is I'm visiting. The only reason I'm not gonna be able to give out her details is because I am her last client before she goes into retirement. Literally, I've booked her for every session that she has available until she retires in 2 weeks time. So really, really sad. But what I will do is I will ask Maggie if there's anyone she can recommend, and I will leave their details down below in the description box on this video. So yeah, today we are going to work on some other stuff, like I said, and we're also going to keep rehearsing the fear of flying. Really enjoying going. Obviously sad to end it, but also keen to get on a plane and actually see if all this effort and money's worked. It's a disgustingly cold day in London. I think it's like 3 degrees. It was snowing earlier as well. So we're having an extra long session, hour and a half. It's cost me £100, which I think is great because an hour is £80. It's been a bit of a rough week. I have been feeling really anxious, not necessarily for the flight, but just in general. I mean, now that the flight's here, I am feeling a little bit like nervous that it's not gonna work. I guess that's the wrong attitude. Like, you need to kind of go into this with a positive mind. PMA, you know, like it's gonna work. I have the tools inside me to not be scared and be very relaxed and comfortable on this flight tomorrow. So yeah, I'm gonna go in and then I guess I'll see you afterwards. Just come out of my 90-minute session. I mean, it was good. Well, you know, I went into a trance, and last week I decided to lie down on the sofa, and I think there's like a level of vulnerability when I lie down, because I decided to sit up this week, because last time when I lay down I started getting like a panicky, like crushing feeling, almost like the start of a panic attack. So yeah, decided to sit up this time. But we did this thing called I think it's an apex bridge, a bridge or something. So she was actually asked me to go back to the point when I first felt anxiety, and it was when I was 7 and my mum put me to bed and she like turned the lights off. And my mum has always been a very anxious person in terms of safety. Meg seems to think that she passed on her anxiety, which is really common. Parents do that a lot, you know, the term your parents fuck you up. So anyway, I started having the panic attack again when I was in the trance. I was thinking about that moment back when I was 7 years old. It wasn't nice, but I managed to get back to a good place. And yeah, it was a good session. We went through the flight again, we went through getting on the plane, being relaxed. She gave me some tips on self-hypnosis that I'm gonna use before I get on the flight tomorrow. And hopefully I'm in a good place when I get on the flight, during the flight, and when I get off the flight. We shall see tomorrow at the airport. Basically all packed and ready to go to Edinburgh. It's D-Day. It is not great weather today. There is a blanket of cloud in the sky, not a smidge of blue, just all pale white. So not the most desirable conditions for flying, but that's fine, it doesn't matter. I've taken off in weather like this before. Mercury is in retrograde at the moment, which means I am super clumsy. I'm dropping everything. I'm going the wrong direction. Nearly every single day I've taken a wrong turn, and I'm quite anxious this week in general. 5 sessions of hypnotherapy and it's time to get on a plane. How am I feeling right now? Well, I've got a 90-minute journey to the airport, which will be fine, and then at the airport, whatever, and then I'm gonna try and do some self-hypnosis, which we touched on yesterday, where I kind of like just slow my breathing down and get into a sort of like trance. I'm not 100% confident I'm gonna be able to do it because I've not done it before and I think it's one of those things that's gonna take a little bit of practice, but I just think, you know, calming myself down, going through the rehearsal that we've been doing of how we anticipate the flight to be, just do all of that, and then I guess just get on the fucking plane. I honestly can't tell you how I'm feeling. Like I get a bit anxious, but it's not like real anxiety. It's just like I'm choosing to be excited rather than whenever I think about the flight, feel anxious basically. Something that's really been bothering me is lots of people on social who follow me, and I've been talking about hypnosis for fear of flying. So many people have gotten in touch and said they did it or they knew someone that did it and it was just such a roaring success. Just I will be so annoyed if it doesn't work for me because it sounds like it is successful. And Maggie, the hypnotherapist, was so confident that she could sort this for me. I mean, no one messaged me and said, oh, I did this and it didn't work, or I knew someone who did this and it didn't work. So hey guys, so I'm on the flight in Jessica. We've just ordered some champagne because we're celebrating, I guess, and my first flight after hypnosis. How was it? Well, I'm only 20 minutes in, so I'm gonna wait till I get off the flight to give you the debrief. Okay, I have arrived in Edinburgh. You will not believe what happened on this flight. Like, I was getting on the flight, I was like, oh, please be a smooth flight. It's a nice short one, you know, test the waters after my brain's been addled with. Literally, it was far, it was windy taking off, and I meditated. It was a really long taxi, so I did a self-hypnosis trance on the taxiing. I was under for 30 minutes. I was really keeping myself asleep, like really like breathing, relaxing, saying my mantras, seeing my anxiety as not a part of me but to the side of me, observing it, expecting the best, everything I've been taught, just really going over that pattern that Maggie taught me to just be really calm and relaxed on a flight. In fact, I'm so relaxed and I'm falling asleep. Didn't fall asleep. Anyway, we took off, I opened my eyes. Jessica was like, wow, I've been watching you for like half an hour. You've just been like so quiet. Anyway, we're on the flight. Jessica's been with me through most of the worst flights I've ever had. She knows what I'm like normally. How was I? You were really calm until, actually you were still calm during the end of the flight. Basically, the flight was calm. It was a little bit bumpy at times, but honestly it didn't faze me. But then we were coming into land in Edinburgh, it was foggy, literally just about to touch the runway. Yeah, we did a go around due to bad weather. So that was really, really unfortunate. On my first proper flight, we had like a diversion that took an extra 15 minutes, but eventually we did land. But do you know what the strangest thing was? When I was doing the diversion, when we were like taking off again because we couldn't land with a strong tailwind, I was calm. I was calm, it was fine. My mum's just arrived, I will continue this in a second. Classic! Classic! Every time she picks us up, there's something new in the car. I guess on the way to the airport, I was a little bit anxious because I thought that it wouldn't work. I was like, oh, why have we wasted all this time and money and effort? And I get on that plane and I'm still just as nervous as I was, you know, last time I flew. That's decades of building up and rehearsing that fear mechanism. I hate flying, listening for every sound, noise, bump, dip, and hating it, right?
expecting the worst. So I got on, obviously I'm deep within my self-hypnosis. Jessica said I was really deep. I felt deep, but I still had a little bit of a pounding in my chest. So if anyone out there is watching this and they're thinking, oh, is hypnosis gonna, like, you know, go to a few sessions, it's just gonna cure my fear that I've been building up for years, I think the honest answer is no, it's not. On the flight, it wasn't like I was never anxious, but the anxiety was a lot more controllable. And the further I went into the flight, and the more bumps and the more noises happened, the more at ease I was, because I realized that it's okay. It actually was, and it was almost like all the information and the practicing that I've been doing, the rehearsing to be okay with it, kicked in, and it got a lot easier. Okay, to be fair, we did drink half a bottle of champagne between us, but alcohol's never worked for me on a flight as a relaxant. I think what's going to happen is the more flights I take, the more I use this approach, I use this technique, and I reinforce my new memories by unraveling the fear memories and strengthening the new memories, which are ones of safety and being relaxed. The stronger they get, the easier it's going to be. But I think it was absolutely staggering when we came into land. There was fog, you couldn't see the ground at all, and then we did the huge vroom, and the plane went up again. Normally I would have been like, oh my god, my stomach is in my feet, but literally I was so calm. And Jessica's like, you're fine. I was like, I actually am fine. Like, I actually am fine. And eventually we landed, and please ignore my mother's commentary in the background, she can't help herself. It wasn't like I'd been through something stressful. It was fine. So when I take the flight back next week on my own, I'm going to do the same thing, put myself under, reinforce the safety, know that it's fine, accept the bumps for what they are, and hopefully from here on out it only gets easier. Jessica, have you got anything to add? Because you fly with me all the time. So.
What I found was that you, whenever there was a bump or shake, like during the flight,
what would I normally do?
You'd be like, ah, you'd like grab me and you'd be like, and you just were so calm, and we just carried on talking, and it wasn't even like your voice would change and you could sense stress or anxiety in your voice, you just kept talking. Yeah. So that was like the most surprising thing for me, that you remained calm.
And that's an external thing, so that's what Jessica can see as someone that is traveling with me a lot. Internally, I did register every bump. It's not like they're unconscious to me.
Yeah, but it's more like you accept that they're there
and they're safe. And
they're safe. Yeah. So it's the acceptance, and the acceptance that your anxiety might always be there, but it's manageable, and you go through it, and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, and hopefully it will just get stronger.
Totally.
So yeah, that was my experience with hypnosis for fear of flying. So it's been a week since the last time I flew, and I obviously had that flight up to Scotland with my sister for the job. Nice easy one to, you know, test out my newfound lack of fear of flying. And yeah, as you saw, like, it went well. Jessica was so impressed with how calm I was, and like I commented, it wasn't as if I was completely anxiety free. I still kind of had an awareness of my anxiety, but it wasn't like taking over my body and brain, which was super important, I think, and definitely showed me progress. Even when they did that go around and like we were literally meters from the tarmac, and then that normally would have just sent shock waves of like dread through me. And I don't know whether it was the champagne or like the hypnosis or both, or the fact Jessica was with me, but I was calm. Like, it literally, I didn't flinch, which for me was major, considering I'm at my worst point when it comes to my fear of flying, and then to get on the next flight after, you know, 6 weeks of hypnotherapy, to not feel anything as soon as the plane diverts and just powers back into the sky. Like, that would normally send me around the bend. So for me, that was massive step forward. I then took a flight back from Edinburgh on my own. Unfortunately, it wasn't as successful as the one I took with Jessica. Now, I'm not really sure why. Like I said, it might have been the champagne, it might have been the fact I had a friend with me. You know, on this return flight from Edinburgh, I was wedged in the middle of 2 people. I didn't have a window to look at, but it shouldn't have been a problem, because apparently that's not an issue anymore. It wasn't as bad as it normally is, but the anxiety, I did feel there were a few points in the hour-long flight that it did actually get the better of me, and it managed to like surge up a little bit. So where does that leave us, I guess? You know, I've done the work. I found that I can quite easily and successfully take myself into a self-hypnosis trance, which I'm going to continue to practice and get better at, because I feel like when I can access that, that's when I'm gonna basically give myself the best chance of being okay during takeoff, because takeoff is my absolute worst. It's like the biggest trigger for me. Second trigger being the turbulence. I feel like I'm dealing with that so much better now. In fact, the turbulence isn't really an issue. Even on the flight back on my own from Edinburgh, when it was turbulent, I was okay. I will continue to work towards getting better at flying. I feel like, if anything, this is going to be an accumulative process where the more flights I rack up, the more I put into practice my hypnosis and my, you know, rehearsing this idea that I'm relaxed and I'm okay, the easier it's going to get for me. I actually floated the idea on Instagram, and a few people did get back and say that actually they found that it was a process where they had to kind of build up to getting better and better, and now they are at a place where they are fully free of a fear of flying. So I can only hope that's where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna continue my work and everything Maggie taught me, because she really was amazing. I've seen that I can do it. I've seen that I can have a flight free of anxiety and fear. I had a 3 steps forward and 1 step back. So if that's the process, then that's the process. But would I recommend hypnosis for fear of flying? I definitely would. I think I am quite a special case in the sense that my anxiety and my fear is so bad to the point where I, you know, consider like staying wherever I go just because I don't want to get back on that flight. So bad that when we land on the ground, I'm crying tears of relief. Like, that is how bad my anxiety was. I'm also quite a controlling and hyper anxious person in day to day. It's not like I get about my life and I'm absolutely fine all the time, and it's only getting on a flight that sends me into anxiety mode. I generally am quite an anxious person, so I feel like I had all the odds were against me in entering into this experiment, and I came out, you know, with a successful flight under my belt, which I feel really proud of. So I would definitely recommend hypnosis for anyone that has whatever degree of fear of flying. Even if your anxiety is as bad as mine, you might have to work a little bit harder and for a bit longer, but I think you'll get there, and I think I will too. And if you've just got like a mild fear, then I think a few sessions should do you great, and then you'll be off. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's just something a little bit different on my channel. I wanted to share this experience with you guys because it's something that is such a huge thing for me. I'm taking it very seriously. It's part of my work. It's a monthly occurrence getting on flights for me, so I really need to face it head on, and I was willing to do anything. And this was kind of the last attempt. So yeah, if you've got any questions about the process, please do not hesitate to ask me them down below in the comment section. If you've come over from Instagram, again, please leave all your comments and questions down below. On YouTube, I know often people will come over on Instagram and DM me, but if we could all just keep it here, that'd be great, because then I can just answer them all together for everyone that's got a question or a query or a comment that they want to make. As always, thank you so much for joining me on my channel. I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll see you back here on my channel next week, guys. Thanks for joining me, and take care.